Hey guys, it's Jennifer Lanis. I'm in my basement studio and I wanted to share with you some things that I presented at our Kansas City training for our mid-year training. One of the things we talked about was toners. I got to present toners. We have amazing new toners in our world with the sheer acidic toners. What I did to display those is I just put each one on a long piece of weft and then labeled it. This is really kind of good for a display. I took a white mailing label and stapled it to the weft and then put a second one directly over the top of that I labeled, and then I put a piece of Velcro on the back. I used the soft side so that I can use the sticky or the pokey side, I guess the soft side, pokey side, not sure, on the actual flip chart. But then I have a second version of that on a cardstock that lives in a binder that I can place those in to keep the toners looking beautiful. The sheer acidic toners, gorgeous toners. They're acid-based. They don't shift your natural underlying pigment. And one of the things I love about them is how pigmented they are. They're beautifully pigmented. So sheer acidic toners, a great way of displaying those. Now let's talk a little bit about the fast toners, the anti-red, anti-brass, anti-yellow. What I did for those is I felt like when I was out presenting them in salons that our stylists don't always understand where to tone and how to use them. And they're an incredible toner, but I wanted to make sure that they really could visually understand. So on a piece of cardstock paper, I took weft and I labeled it 1 through 5. What I did was I applied the anti-red, left it on to process for 1 minute, 1 for 2 minutes, 1 for 3 minutes, 1 for 4 minutes, and 1 for 5 minutes. So we can really see the gradient tonality from the sheer all the way to, in 5 minutes, really, really, really pigmented anti-red toner. Now, on the cardstock, it actually has a really green tone. I'm not sure if we can see it in this lighting, but it has a green tone to it. What I did with that is I grabbed some cardstock paper. This is just a dark red cardstock paper. Think of it as underlying pigment. If I lift that hair to a dark red and I use my anti-red on it, what happens is the green that lives on that blonde hair has now completely neutralized in the dark red. But as I go lighter, it doesn't have enough because I didn't leave it on long enough to neutralize that. But if I go lighter with my underlying pigment, maybe I lifted it a little further. At 5 minutes, still beautifully neutralized. But neutralized also beautifully in that 2 and 3 minutes. But at 1 minute, it's not enough. But what if I lifted it a little further and I use my orange underlying pigment? Now at 1 or 2 minutes, I'm beautifully neutralized. But if I go all the way further, if I leave it on longer, I just slide that right underneath there, then I end up with really a funky color because the green and the orange don't really work well together. So that was a great way of displaying that. I did that also with my anti-brass. Anti-brass, 1 minute to 5 minutes. Again, if I go in with an orange at 5 minutes, I'm beautifully toned. I get a gorgeous tonality out of that. But at 1 or 2 minutes, it's just not enough time to counterbalance that orange underlying pigment. But as I move up into my what I consider brassy colors, when I get into that yellow-orange world, that nice level 7, and I put that underneath that level 5, or that 5-minute toner, beautifully toned. And I would say it really controls at about 3 minutes. 1 to 2 minutes, it's not enough. But what if I lifted lighter? Now I can come in with my more of that level 8, and 1 to 2 minutes is beautiful. However, if I go all the way to 5 minutes, then it almost gets really smoky. So a great way of describing that is it's great here, but if we're looking for a very smoky tone, we need to leave it on longer. If you're not looking for smoky, then make sure you take that anti-brass off sooner. Or maybe anti-brass alone isn't the right toner. Maybe we need to mix in some anti-yellow into there. Now I did the same thing for my anti-yellow, and this one I felt was really, really important because the gradient value of the 1 through the 5 is huge. Something else I want to point out really quick, I also used Velcro on these, so they can be taken off and used directly on that underlying pigment swatch or that foundation paper that I've put in there. So now here at an anti-yellow, if I go in with that underlying pigment of an 8, this is beautifully toned. If I go in at 1 minute, it's not quite enough. It's really quite sheer. If I go in at a level 9 underlying pigment, at 1 minute, it's really pretty. 2 to 3, it's even better. Now if I go all the way to 5 minutes, it may be too far. It's really counterbalanced that yellow in the hair, but this could be considered overtoned if I'm looking for a really pale. Now if I go in with a level 10, I've lifted to a level 10, at 5 minutes, that's really smoky, really beigey. If I go to 1 to 2 minutes, then it's gorgeous. Okay, so, but what I think is really important is we think of those 5-minute toners, we have other options as to things that we can use in our portfolio. So what if we do the same with Color Sync? So here's Color Sync. Color Sync at a level 10, on a level 10, is gorgeous toning. If I go in with my level 10 underlying pigment under an 8, I've got 8A, 8P, I did a 10A, a 10V, and a 10P, just for examples. So at a 10, or I'm sorry, at a 10 it was beautiful. At an 8, we've got extremely smoky color. But what if I go a little deeper? At a level 9, that 10 is pretty, but it's not as toned. So maybe we needed to lift to a level 10 to apply that level 10 on top of it. But when I look at that level 8, and I slide that under, now I'm starting to see beautiful smoky tones. And if I go to my underlying pigment of an 8, now it's toned at the right level. So I did this with our Color Sync. I did it with our sheer pastels, with some SPs. I did it with Imprints. I did 10s. And I did the super sheers with Imprints to give different visuals and different options for toners. While I'm still on the antis, let me go back to those for just a second. Another way of working with those antis and really doing a great job of describing what they do and how they do it. What if we're using them from a corrective color perspective? So this is the anti-red on blonde hair. And this is really that level 10 blonde, the pivot point swatches. What I did here is on this wide swatch, I colored it with my So Color Cult Red Hot, and then I put the anti-red over the top. Now this was on longer than 5 minutes, but it did a really beautiful job of toning down that red, and that's So Color Cult. Here's anti-brass. I did it with the Orange Alert, and then the same thing, I put half of that Orange Alert, I put the anti-brass over the top, and got a beautiful neutralization. Then this one I was even most impressed with. So here's the anti-yellow and blonde. This is that same blonde hair that I used the rubber ducky, the yellow from our So Color Cult, and this is all semi-permanent. I went over the top of it with the anti-yellow, and look at how that toned out Lucky Ducky. So beautiful ways of using that from a corrective color. The other thing I did is you can also do it, excuse me for spinning back and forth on you guys, hopefully I'm not making you dizzy because I'm getting myself a little dizzy. When I was talking about So Silver, this is So Silver shampoo with 2 minutes and 5 minutes, and this is the So Silver conditioning mask with 2 minutes and 5 minutes. Then I did Brass Off shampoo, 2 minutes and 5 minutes, and the conditioning mask, 2 minutes and 5 minutes. Call out on this. This was something that we talked about in our training. I asked, why is the shampoo more pigmented than the mask? I spoke with a chemist asking about that because I felt that was really an interesting call out. What I learned is that shampoos are anionic, which means that they remove pigment, or not pigment, they remove minerals and dirt, etc. from the hair. So if they put a color molecule in an anionic condition or in an anionic shampoo, they must put in a heavier dye load because it removes at the same time as it's depositing. In a mask, because it is cationic, meaning that it is a conditioner, the cationic is going to deposit into there, so you don't need as heavy of a dye load in there. So something cool I learned speaking to a chemist. And then on this page is So Silver with 2 minutes with the shampoo and 2 minutes with the mask. And this is Brass Off, 2 minutes with the shampoo, 2 minutes with the mask. All of these I put on cardstock with a 3-punch hole. Bought myself a binder. I used the legal size paper and then the legal size binder because it was wide enough to hold all 5 of those swatches. Hope that helps. I hope you enjoy it. You'll need weft, you'll need toners, you'll need Velcro strips, you'll need address labels, a stapler, the cardstock, and the binder. So hope that works. Love what happened in our class, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.